All right, welcome to the not so fun side of lobster fishing. Well, one of the not so fun parts. There's quite a list of not so fun parts. But if you watched last video, you know that 100 of the lobster traps that were in the ocean took it very hard by something called borers. They're basically ocean termites, and they're actually a little mollusk. They're a weird looking little creature, and their sole purpose in life is to eat wood on the ocean floor. I guess it's nature's way of accelerating the decomposition of wood in the ocean, which is all well and good unless you're depending on that wood for a smooth workflow throughout your day, which we usually do. The bottom of our traps have these wood runners on them, and this makes handling the traps much better on the boat. They'll actually slide on the rail, and it also gives the bottom of the traps protection from sitting on ledge. Historically, traps were always made out of wooden runners, but modern materials and advancement in materials have us switching to metal runners. The metal runners are great because they double as a weight. There's steel on the middle, and they're coated with a rubber vinyl type coating on the outside, so they hold up good and they double as weight, and the borers can't eat them. The trouble is they're super expensive, and putting them on is time consuming, so we actually brought the 100 traps that were in the ocean that took a lot of damage from the borers in. They're down here on the float, so we're going to go out and spend the day fixing the runners on the traps. I'll go grab the boat.
All right.
What a beauty day. Why aren't we trout fishing?
I know.
So today marks the first day of spring maintenance, and middle of April is kind of when the coast starts to come alive and come out of winter hibernation, if you will. The lobster fishery is actually open year round, but in the winter we don't fish a lot. A lot of people will actually take their traps up, put them on land, they'll put their boats on land. Some fishermen will stay in the water, but fishing slows down a lot. The weather gets extremely tough, the fishing gets slow. The people that take their traps up will put them on wharfs like you just saw us on. So one of the advantages to taking all your traps up in the winter and putting your boat on land is you get to do all the spring maintenance on land. When you leave your traps in the water and you leave your boat in the water, all the April maintenance has to be done in the water, which makes things a lot more difficult. With that said, taking all 800 traps up in the fall is also a lot of work. There's no real shortcut around this. So each boat on the coast of Maine is owner-operator only. So that means you have to own the boat if you want to run it. So I can't hire somebody to go run my boat for me, which is pretty interesting. You don't see that in a lot of industries, and it really promotes small business. It prevents fleets from being created, and you know that every lobster you buy from Maine is supporting a small family-owned business. Most zones on the coast, with the exception of a few, are allowed 800 traps per boat, which is what we fish. We currently have 700 traps in the water because we brought 100 of them into land that are sitting on that float behind me. So the mission today is to take those runners. We got to go out to the float. We got to rip off all the old runners that the borers chewed mostly off, and we got to replace them with new steel runners and patch them with wood runners as well. I don't know if we'll be able to do all 100 of them today, but we're going to give it our best effort and hopefully put 50 of them on the boat so we can go set them the next day that we go to haul. One interesting thing as well about these wharfs that I'm pulling up to, where the truck is parked, is they're tidal wharfs only. So this is where a lot of people will store their traps for the winter. If you pull down pretty much any harbor in Maine, you'll find wharfs like this, and you can only get up to them on the high tide. So either 2 hours before high tide or 2 hours after high tide is when you can get boats up to them. On low tide, the tide actually drains out and it's all mud flats, and you can't get up to them on the low tide. So they're convenient, but you do have to work around the tides to get to them. So we actually lucked out a little bit. I thought with these 100 traps, all 100 of them needed new metal runners, but it turned out the second 50 actually weren't that bad. The wood runners, we had replaced them once already, and when we did, we replaced them with jungle wood. Jungle wood is a type of wood that seems to be pretty resistant to borers. It's a pretty hard wood, but it is brittle. So I was able to save a few bucks, and I'm hoping that we can just patch 50 of the trap, and the other 50, they're too far gone. We just have to start completely over, put all metal runners on those ones, which is super expensive. All right, so right here we have 50 that need patching with the wood runners that we have, and then over there we have 50 that need all new metal runners installed on them. This is not going to be a fun nor fast process, but it's got to be done. We're going to start on the wood runners first because we're going to make a lot more headway on the wood runners. The metal runners are going to be very time consuming, and that's just going to be discouraging if we start there. If we start on the wood, we'll be good and high-spirited after 50, and then we got to go into the metal runners, which is going to suck. So we're going to fix the runners, put them on the boat, and get them ready to set all at the same time, so that way when we're done, they're all done, ready to go in the water tomorrow. So as you can see, this one looks like it has two pretty good runners on it, but if you look close, you can see where the borers have actually chewed it all to pieces. It's very soft, and it's not going to last much longer.
This one doesn't look too bad. Oh boy.
So one of the things we got to do is put hog rings in the escape vent. This is an escape vent. You can see it's covering a big hole in the side of the trap. And this escape vent is held in with biodegradable hog rings. So that way in the event the trap is lost on the ocean floor, these hog rings will rust away. This door will open up and anything inside the trap can get out, and the trap just becomes habitat at that point. But we do need to keep good biodegradable hog rings in the trap to make sure we don't lose our catch while we're fishing them. These also act as a filter. You can see they have holes in them to allow the small lobsters to crawl out. On the other side is a rectangle one to allow the crabs to crawl out, and these act as filters to let what we don't want out of the traps. That way we can focus more on what we do want. So as you can see, the borers got both runners off of this one. There's nothing left of it. So we're putting two new runners on it and fasten them on. You use these little plastic washers, basically just a washer. They go on the inside, screws go down through them into the wood. Hopefully the borers don't get them within the next year.
Yeah. You're gonna travel fire and water.
We're doing help.
Yeah, this is a good size. Is that a head you can? Let's try that. Wow. Then probably could have gotten the year out of that one.
So this is the rope that we use to tie the traps together on bottom. This runs from trap to trap. We fish 5 traps per end line. So we'll have a buoy that goes from the surface, runs down to bottom, and there'll be 5 traps tied to each other that go across the bottom. This is the rope that's used to tie them together. We're tying them together right now as we go, so that way we don't have to do that step when we get to where we're going to set them. This rope is actually a neutrally buoyant rope. We used to fish float rope in between the traps, which is ideal because it doesn't lay on bottom. This neutrally buoyant rope actually sinks and it lays on bottom, and when you fish hard bottom, ledges or anything like that, it actually chafes and saws with the tide and the current, and it chafes it up. This rope only lasts 2 or 3 years, but it is the only legal rope that we're allowed to use now, because shortly after I started fishing, due to whale regulations, we were forced to switch to this neutrally buoyant rope. So the idea behind the neutrally buoyant rope is that it lays on bottom and it doesn't float, and it reduces risk to entanglement. This rope's kind of been a headache for us, but it is what it is.
No.
You're looking good, Cody. Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. This stack's going all right. We've only been going about an hour. We got 30 on here. We've only got 20 left to put on the boat. We can fit 100, but it's crammed. These are 5-foot traps, and trying to put 100 5-foot traps on this boat is a load. So we're just doing 50 this time. We'll do 50 the next time. After we get all 50 of these ones on, we're gonna jump over and do the dreadful task that I've been dreading for over a year now, which is installing those metal runners onto the next 50. We got the 50 that needed patchwork all ready to go on the boat. We just got to put the end lines on them when we get to where we're going tomorrow. Now we're on to the not so fun task. And you can see that these ones don't actually screw on. They have bolts on them with nuts. We got to pop the nuts off of them and actually bolt them onto the trap, which is nice once it's done because they're permanent, but it's going to be time consuming. We also have to take all the runners that are good off the traps. These ones are about 50% chewed off already. It's going to be a process. This is going to suck.
Get them ready, and then it'll be pretty slick.
1 down, 99 to go. So whatever they coated these things with, it's a battle, because the nuts are down on the threads, and the threads themselves are coated as well, and they're coming off fairly dry. Say we got a day of prepping the runners before we even got a day of putting the runners on. The hardest part with something like this is always the first couple traps. We need to figure out some kind of assembly line, whose jobs are what. You gotta hit it harder. The good thing is there's a lot of repetition, so once we figure out whose job is what, it's just basically an assembly line. We just got to figure out how to build the assembly line. There you go, look at you go. All right, let's see what we got. These are going to be heavy traps. We get the drill going. The first trap took about 10 minutes. We got to find a faster way to get them done. We're getting 6 done an hour at that pace. Woo! Yeah, we gotta pick up the pace. They do look nice. These also come with bumpers on the front, so when they come up and they slam off the front of the boat, they don't break the coating. Boy, is she pretty. Look at that.
Dude.
That's a nice looking trap. First one's always the worst anyway. We'll figure it out. Woo, they're heavy. I think it was a good call to start on the wood runners. I would have got discouraged and quit. Thing is, this was taking me about 6 minutes. 2 down, 48 to go. We got 5 done out of 50. I don't know, what have we been going, a half an hour? I'm starting to get some kind of system figured out, but man, there's so many steps to this. So many little steps that all just add up into, feels like I'm trying to juggle 10 balls. But we're getting them and they're coming out nice. They're super heavy. They're a lot heavier than I thought because they already have weights in them. The reason we have weights in the traps is because the rope that goes to the surface and fishing deep water, they tend to roll over with the tide. We have a lot of tide where we fish, a lot of current, and it rolls the traps over if they're not heavy enough. So the weight in the bottom of them keeps them upright on bottom. If they land on their side or upside down, they actually won't fish, believe it or not. If the trap lands upside down, the only thing that will crawl in it are crabs, which is not what we're after. We prefer not to catch crabs. Probably weigh about 70 pounds, which is too heavy. Well, we came to the realization there was zero possible chance we're getting all 50 of these done today. So we switched gears and we went into prep mode. We just ended up prepping the steel runners and removing all the old runners off of these traps, which is what we're currently doing. And inside of this one, you can actually see the old remains of the borers, the shells that are left. They're dried out now and dead, but you can see their shells. Weird little things. We got 4 traps left to prep. We're gonna call it a day. We've been down here for a while and I didn't bring any food. One more? Yeah. That's the one?
That's the one. We've already got him hog rings. Good.
Nothing else.
Alright, we still got them prepped anyway.
Yeah, we got the miserable part done. Well, that is a wrap. We put a good dent in them. We got all the time-consuming, tedious stuff done, so we gotta set these traps tomorrow. Finish those 40 up, put them on, and set them out, and we'll have all 800 back in the water. We'll be hauling regularly, taking you guys along, and hopefully catching some cool stuff and showing you some stuff on the ocean.